Alright, welcome to Friday's lesson, and it is week 3. Students have started this assignment here on statistics in the media. There is a previous post up on the Google Classroom that addresses week 2 and part 1. We are now moving on to part 2 of the assignment. So if you're just tuning in and you've not addressed part 1, please stop the recording now, go to Google Classroom, find week 2 and watch the recording on part 1 for week 2, and that will help you address part 1 of the assignment. So part 2, what do we know so far? Well, we would have learnt how to calculate a 5-number summary in our Education Perfect task from week 2, and part 1 would have helped us address the rainfall for the 12-month period in that data set that we see at the start of the assignment. Part 2, guess what? You've got some new numbers here. Okay, part 2, we've been given the rainfall for 2017 here. So what would we need to do, guys, if we were going to calculate a 5-number summary? So I'm going to put up a whiteboard, okay, and I'm going to type up here 5-number summary, and let's pretend we've got some random rainfall for Adelaide. Okay, so the last rainfall of Adelaide, let's say, was 12, 32, 23, 16, 72, 73, sorry, 45, 12, 9. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0, and 0. All right. So 5-number summary, what is going to be included in a 5-number summary for this? So let's do this is example 1. Rainfall of Adelaide for 2017. This is an example just for us to take a look at. You can go back to the recording and double check it if you need to revise what a 5-number summary is. But these are the steps that we're going to be calculating to calculate a 5-number summary. First of all, what's a 5-number summary? Does someone want to unmute themselves or just text chat out to me? What is a 5-number summary? What sort of things are we going to include? Don't want you to calculate it right now, but just to define what is a 5-number summary, what sort of things are we going to include in a 5-number summary? Thank you very much. So Shani has said that we are going to include a minimum value. All right, that's your first value in the 5-number summary. You're going to have a Q1. You're going to include the median and the Q3 and a maximum value. Okay, so what would I need to do to calculate some of these? Is there some values here that I can straight away point out? What values could I identify immediately from this data set without having to do too much? Okay, do you guys want to highlight the minimum for me or circle it? What's the minimum value in this data set that we could type in? Yeah, 0. Okay, so let's put that in there. What's another data value? So the minimum value there, guys, it's not 12. Minimum value is 0. Okay, there was 0 rainfall for those last 2 months that we can see there. So the minimum value therefore would be 0. Okay, we include that once. What would our maximum value be? Yeah, 73. Fantastic. Great. Okay. What about the median? Do you guys recall how to calculate the median? Or what is the median, first of all? What's the step to calculate the median? Okay, Edward reckons it's the average. So it is a measure of center for sure. It's a measure of center, but the mean, when we add up everything and divide it by 12, that's going to give us the mean or the average. The median is where we're going to order these numbers out from lowest to highest, and then we're going to circle the middle value. Okay, that's what I'm going to get you guys to do now, is help me out by typing out the lowest value. So what's our lowest value we can start off with? So we need to reorder these numbers. So we've got 12, 32, 23, 16. These are not ordered at the moment. This is not an ordered data set. We need to order it before we find the median. So let's give that a go. So if you can type that in for me, start me off in the text chat. We've got 0, thanks, 0. What's our next one? You guys can cross them off if you want. Yep, we've got 9. We've got 12. You've got 12. The next lowest number after 12 and 12 is 16. Thanks. And then the next lowest number after 16 is 23. Thanks, Eddie. Cheers. Next lowest number after 23 is 32. Fantastic. Then we've got 45, and then we've also got 73. Right. So what would we need to do? Do you guys want to circle roughly or what is the middle value at the moment? Or is that a step that we need to do before we decide on what the median is? Because I've got 12 numbers in this data set. So whereabouts is the middle? Hey, thanks for circling that in purple. Awesome job. So what do I need to do with these two numbers? I've got 12 and 16 as my two middle values. What do I need to do? Does someone want to type up the steps that they're going to do to try and calculate the median here? That's absolutely fine. Do you want to put that one up there? Because I want to actually include that in the recording for anyone that wants to watch it again or has forgotten. They can go back to this recording and watch it again. But that's absolutely correct there, Shani. We're going to add them together and then divide it by 2 because we're going to find the average or the halfway point between them. So if you're happy to type that up on there, even the instructions just below it. Perfect. And even you got it color coordinated. Awesome. Add them together and then divide them by 2. We can do that step as well. We'll keep it in purple. Yep. So we're going to put in brackets 12 plus 16, close bracket, divided by 2. And what do we get, guys? So what is our median going to be equal to? So we've got 12, 16, add that together, we get 28. 28 divided by 2 gives you 14. Cool. So we can write that in there. 14 is our median. Okay, what about this Q1, lower quartile? What is the lower quartile all about? If I make this as a focus in bright green, I'm going to highlight the lower quartile, and then I'd like to hear from you. So we've got the lower data set there in this green box. What do I need to do with it now? What's my focus going to be? Okay, cool. So the center of the lower quartile there is 9. Great. So we're going to include that. Yes. Cool. We can write that in. 9. All right. Let's get another funky color and circle the upper quartile. So there's our upper quartile in blue. You've got 16, 23, 32, 45, 73. If you highlight that, yeah, we'll keep it color coordinated. I don't know why, but when you learn, guys, when you're learning things, color coordination, actually, your brain really appreciates that. So we've got 32 as our Q3. Right, beautiful. Was that Okay, guys, is everyone kind of understanding the procedure around here that we're going by? If not, we've got this recorded now and you can go back and watch it to double check this procedure, okay? But this is an example here of part two, rainfall for Adelaide 2017. And hey, what can we do now with this 5 number summary? What could I do with this now? B, I love your thinking there. Box and whisker plot. So I'm going to draw a not to scale box and whisker plot on this page up here. Well, actually, you guys can help me. But basically, we get a whisker starting off. Actually, we can do this. We can definitely do this on. So this is I'm going to do one on the webcam. I'm going to turn the webcam on. Hey guys, again. And let's get, nope, the second camera is not. Cool. We got our exercise book and we have a blank page. Fantastic. All right, so I can now write out my 5 number summary and then I'm going to we'll summarize this on the page later on so then everyone who's watching the recording can see. Well, maybe I can drag this across. I'll drag this across and you can sort of see in the corner as to what's happening if you're on YouTube watching in the future or in the past. Anyway, so let's get our ruler. Actually, let's write in our 5 number summary. 5. I'm going to get a pen that works. Pencil. 5 number summary. And then we've got our min, Q1, median, Q3, max. If we summarize that. So guys, you can always summarize this in a table. Just keep it neat. So this is what I'd like you to do in your assignment. So if you've done part 1, this would look very familiar. Now you're doing this for part 2 with another data set because we're going to eventually compare the rainfalls in this assignment for Broken Hill, which will be able to link to drought. Okay, so there's a bit of a trend happening all around Australia and different outback towns, I'm sure you're aware of, are actually in a bit of drought at the moment. So just drag that across so I can see. So we've got 0, we've got 9, 14, 32, and 73. And then we're going to sketch this out, okay? So from our last one, you'll compare this with it. So you could put this in 5 number summary at the top, 2017, right? You could go off and compare these for different years. And some students who want to extend their mark to a higher level may well actually end up doing that and go off and find this data from Australian Bureau of Statistics or BOM on the Bureau of Meteorology. You could go and look this up in the historical data as well and compare this. So you'd need to do some calculations for the past few years. We could compare it to 2007, for example. You can compare it to 1997, like every 10 years or something, going back just to show you what's going to happen. Anyway, let's get our box and whisker plot going. So I know that it goes up to 73. So I might go up in twos up here. We'll see how we go. This should fit, hopefully. 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, So just for the recording, just setting up in the exercise book a timeline or a scale, which is where we're going to draw our box and whisker plot above it. So I'm just going to sketch this in. So you guys might want to draw this in as well as we're going along, because hey, it's going to help you for your next part too. 26, 28, 30, 32, 34, 36, 38, 40, 42, 44, 46, 48. No, don't think we're going to fit. All right. So we might need to change our scale. So that's what we need to do is think, oh, if I set up my box and whisker plot, it's not going to be to scale. I'm going to be trying to draw it off on another page. So important that we set this up. So another scale that might be more appropriate is going up in fives. Okay, so we need to go up to 73. So we're going up to 75. So I'm marking in these. So you will have to estimate across some of these to make it as you can. So every 2 blocks up, I've gone up 5. Okay, that's for my particular scale here. All right, so let's mark it our first number, which is the minimum. So we're starting at 0. So I'll mark that in there. That's going to go up to 9 for the Q1. So just below 10 would be appropriate spot to draw in the start of my box. Sketch up the whisker. I'm going to extend my box up to 14 to where the median is. So the median is 14 about there. Sketch this one across. And then the rest of the box is going to represent, so this is representing, you've got Q1, your minimum, your median right here. And then up here, the next lot, we've got up to Q3 to 32, which is up to just beyond 30. So 32 and a half would be at that line. So 32 is about here. Let's sketch that one up. Can you guys see this? Is this okay? You make it tick go across. Yep. Do you guys get what's happening? So we're starting to draw our box and whisker plot. And once again, guys, the Education Perfect, seriously, it goes over this in depth. So sorry if you feel like it's been repeated. If it's not been repeated enough, Education Perfect will absolutely drum this in. And then we've got 73 as our maximum value, which is up. 72 and a half, so about there. Okay, so once again, this is not in this data set. It's just hypothetical. We just made it up today to use, but this is the same process that you're going to be using for your assignment. Okay, so you would go off, calculate this just like we've done on the slide, in the PowerPoint, just over here. Okay, just like you've done up here, you've ordered your data set, you've worked out what the median is, you've worked out the Q1, the Q3, and then you've calculated, or you've stated what the minimum and the maximum is. So from this data set, what do you notice? What does it look like? What do you say about the rainfall here for this year in 2017 in Adelaide? Put a title, 2017 rainfall for Adelaide. So as a rule of thumb, guys, absolutely always label every single diagram in life. Anything you use in any assignment, make sure you label it. What do we notice about the rainfall here? Was it a really wet season, really wet year, or was it a dry year? Someone unmute themselves. I don't have the chat open at the moment. What does our box and whisker plot look like? Where's the average? So our average is here, our center of spread, and then there's a big spread up here. It's almost like a bit of an outlier, I suppose, but most of the data is sitting in the lower spectrum between, you know, 9 and 32. So one thing that you'll need to calculate as well is the range and the interquartile range. So what's the range and the interquartile range? What are these? Range and interquartile range. How do you calculate the range, guys, from this data set? So I know that the range goes up from here to here. What should I do? What's my steps? If I know these values, what are the steps I'm going to get involved with? Cool. So I'm going to subtract the lowest from the highest, basically minimum from the max. So that's 73 is our range. I am also going to get the interquartile range. So what would the interquartile range include? Involving quartiles. Q3, take Q1. So I'd get 32, take 9. What do we get? So our answer would be 23. Great. All right. So if we were to take a summary or a snapshot of our box and whisker plot, it would look something like this. All right, so in summary, that's basically what our box and whisker plot would look like, with 0 as the minimum. Type these in. So we've got 0, we've got 9, we've got 14, we've got 32, and 73. All right, is everyone okay on the number crunching for this? This is basically what you need to produce for your task here. With these numbers here, it says find a 5-number summary, use a graphical display, and compare and describe data distributions. So you need to compare with the data set from part 1. All right, so you're basically going to draw back-to-back box and whisker plots and compare the rainfall. All right, so this is the rainfall for 2017. These are the steps that you're going to complete. Is that cool, guys? That's all you're doing for this slide here that it's asking. 5-number summary and a graphical representation, which is your box and whisker plot down here. So tick or cross if you need some help with that. Tick if you're all good, cross if you're thinking, hey, I'm not sure. So Edward, you're not sure on this. Ella, you're not sure on this. Maddie, you're not sure on this. All right. So if you're unsure of this, guys, the location that you can go to Education Perfect to help you out with this is right here. So Maths Friday, you've got week 3, the work to do. If you sign into that, you'll scroll down and you've got actually a selection of different choices to work with. You've got box and whisker plots. If you take a look at this, I'll just bring it up real quick. Okay, and this starts off as an introduction to box and whisker plots, assuming you've never made one before, which if you're doing part 2, you hopefully have done one in part 1, but you can go back and review that. It goes off and reviews the main parts of the box and whisker plots. Um, you've got whiskers, involves the 5 points that you're including, and continues on, okay, and so forth. So this is about building building box and whisker plots, and goes off and summarizes that. Okay, so I guarantee if you do this one here, you'll be a pro at it. Okay, revision of the range, revision of the quartiles. Um, this Education Perfect has got it all. Okay, you've got quartiles, interquartile range, 5 point summary, pretty important as well. Plotting box and whisker plots and comparing box and whisker plots as well. So comparing box and whisker plots is what you're going to be doing in this part 2 of the assignment. Okay, so likewise in this Education Perfect, under comparing box and whisker plots, they've got an example here of of age of pottery found in 2 locations, and they're comparing it. This is basically how you're going to present yours, but rather than having 2 different locations, you're going to have 2 different uh, rainfalls for the 2 different years. Okay, all right. So beyond this, after number crunching, I'm not just looking for you to number crunch. I want you to reflect on the numbers that you've crunched, um, and the 2 box and whisker plots. I want you to discuss that often in media, or just consider that often in media statistics, especially when someone wants to justify an opinion, especially in politics, you often find that they will, um, you know, abuse statistics sometimes. Okay, they'll put it in a way or present it in a way that's going to challenge your thinking, maybe even persuade you to vote differently because you've just seen some numbers and it shocks you, and then straight away you're on side with the people that have presented it to you. Okay, if it's unemployment, if it's a whole bunch of whatever statistics they're talking about, in this case we're talking about rainfall. So you need to think carefully about what you hear and read in the media because statistics are not always going to be as they seem. So some issues include insufficient evidence being provided to support the conclusions that are going to be made. So you might find that, they go off and survey 25,000 people, or not even 25,000. Let's say they survey 2,000 people in Australia, and then they use that as the basis of all Australians' opinions on a particular issue. So it might be that chocolate ice cream is the best flavour of ice cream in Australia. Obviously, this is not a serious political issue, but let's just say that's the main issue. All right, we're trying to decide what's the best flavour of chocolate, or best flavour of ice cream in Australia. And we only surveyed 2,000 people, but these 2,000 people work in a chocolate factory. Okay, so that might be a little bit biased. Um, they might obviously have a opinion that's completely different to someone else who works in a vanilla factory or a banana factory, and it's not going to be a representation of the whole population. So insufficient evidence might well be a problem in data sets as well. All right. So you got to think about who have they actually surveyed to get this data from. All right. If that they're doing opinion polls, Donald Trump's really popular. Well, is he really? I don't know. If you actually survey the whole population, you might find otherwise it's a little bit different. Likewise, with our politics here as well, and political parties. Percentages are used without indication of the actual size of the survey as well. Raw figures used that are based on different populations and oversimplification of the results as well. So they might not actually delve into it with depth. So what does the media actually say? So I want to have a look. You're going to have a look at part one. Okay, you're going to compare the Broken Hill rainfall here to the previous data set. That's literally what you're going to do is you're going to calculate 5 number summary for part one here. You're going to compare this with part two for 2017, and you're going to make a comment on what's happening with this trend here. Okay, is there actually a drought? Shani, yeah, you got a question there? Yep. So the monthly rainfall of Adelaide is below. So that was actually an example that we can do to do with outliers. Um, so outliers are basically when what we're going to do is present this data set and then make a comment as to if the data spread is symmetrical, negatively skewed, or positively skewed. So that's to do with the shape of the data as to the way that it travels across. So guys, just ignore this one for the moment, all right? All I want you to worry about is Broken Hill data, the data in Broken Hill, and the trend that the box and whisker plot is focusing on, all right? So all we're doing at the moment is box and whisker plots. We're going to have a look at these other graphs later on as well, all right? But good question, Shani. Thanks for identifying that. But at the moment, all we're going to focus in on, so we'll cover column graphs as well, and cumulative frequency curves as well. But at the moment, box and whisker plots is all I want you to become a pro at. Okay, that's all I want you to be able to do. For part two is compare the Broken Hill rainfall. All right, and you'll see hopefully that it shows that there's a bit of a drought happening. Okay, so what does the media actually say in these news articles? So I'm just going to bring up one of these articles to have a look at. All right, so this is from the ABC here, and you've got drought in far west New South Wales strikes farmers, sporting events, and Indigenous community. So straight away, they're going to include some stats in their article. The landscape looks drier and wildlife are more desperate for feed the further west you drive along the highways of New South Wales. Looks pretty dry out there, guys. Bureau of Meteorology data shows that in the past 2 years, most of the far west region received 400 to 600 millimeters of rainfall and only 100 to 200 millimeters in the past 12 months. That would be 2017, the data that you calculated just then. If you're listening to the recording or if you're about to go off and complete part two, then 12 months ago, 2017, right? So some properties have not received any noteworthy rain in that time. The New South Wales government scrapped its drought declarations more than 5 years ago, but it has not stopped locals from using the term. As, mu- as much as people have avoided the D word, it is a drought, Far West grazier Wesley Herring said. While Far West locals are doing their best to beat the dry spell, the only real cure is rain. And then it goes on to talk about drought and then the impact that it's having on this farming community. They're having to ship in a whole bunch of hay from interstate because they just don't have any feed. Obviously, usually farmers cut their own hay, and then they put it in a shed, and then they'll bring it out and feed them, during the dry time or during the dry season, as opposed to the wet season. So they grow it up, chop it up, and then they can feed their stock or animals. Unfortunately, this time it says that in October 2016 was the last time water ran into our dam. So we're talking 2 years ago, almost. Well, yeah, 2 years ago, that this bloke has had, he's been cut off from water basically. So that's why, the last 2 years he hasn't had any feed. That's why he's got to truck this in. Okay, so it has a bit of an impact around on the town. Sporting tracks drying out, so they can't hold their, well, they can still hold their um, big race that they have, the St. Patrick's Race meeting in Broken Hill. More than 150 tons of sand and tens of thousands of litres of water were poured and graded into the hard dirt track. Obviously, stop it kicking up. A whole bunch of dust, and that cost them 5 grand. They're also suffering like tourism wise because they actually have, when it does rain up there, it's pretty hectic with respects to the amount of water that the body of land up there can hold, and they have a big lake system up there, and the Darling River system up there would usually flow, but okay, levels have dropped 16.5%, and this is obviously a result of the cut in rainfall, and this is having severe effects on a whole bunch of wildlife up there. And these people go up there obviously because they're interested in wildlife. So why would they go up there if there's no wildlife? All right. So the tourism that usually is booming around the lakes is actually cutting out as a result of that. So hotels, shops, and the tourist trade have been knocked about as a result of this drought. So I know it's a bit of beyond, but this is the sort of discussion that we want you to consider around data as well. So, because you're including this data, well, what does it actually mean? Okay, yes, there's a drought that you'll show with your box and whisker plot, but extend on it, talk about it, what's actually happening. That's what the task is saying. But we want you to analyze some of the articles that are up there as well. So that was the first article. So how do the articles make you feel? What data has been used in the article? How does the data affect how you view the article? So what are your thoughts on that first one? All right. How does that make you feel? To live in Adelaide, you're not directly impacted by like water shortages. How do you guys feel about that? Eddie, Ella, Emily, Maddie, Shani, how do you guys feel about that? Just reading a part of that article, what are your overall feelings? If you guys give me a smiley, like, how do you feel about that? Would you like to live out that way? Does anyone actually have friends or family out that way? Have you been out that way before? Maybe you've got friends or family involved in drought elsewhere. No one has an opinion on this at all. Didn't strike a chord with you. Yeah, Eddie's a bit shocked. Yeah, all right. So there's a few of you changing, making some, doesn't look overly positive. I've got this other article up here on the same issue. I just want us to have a look at this one. All right. The title is a bit more dramatic. All right. So sorry if this is if this is actually affecting you. Like if you're a bit upset, please like let me know. I know that it can be a strong issue, especially if you've got family involved in farming or whatnot up there. Please let me know. All right, we can have a talk about it. Um, but this is just something that we need to be aware of because climate change. You've heard of climate change, but this actually does impact on climate change or is connected to it. So the human faces of the worst drought on record. So these are the faces of one of the worst droughts on record. Um, they've travelled to Tamworth to meet the farmers and farmhands working on from sun up to sundown, 7 days a week. There's a bit of a video there, and they've got some data in here to help back up, um, the overall message of the article. It's a very different article to the other one, same content. So these are the faces of one of the worst droughts on record. The farmers are working from sun up to sundown, 7 days a week. The farmhand is staring down unemployment, and the farming contractor has only scrounged a few days of work in the last 11 months. So obviously there's a whole bunch of people that are affected by this as well. We could be even looking at data, unemployment around these regions as a result of the drought. It's definitely higher. Tamworth, on the typical plentiful Liverpool plains, is officially gripped in intense drought, and not a single farmer will harvest a winter crop. So that not having an income, and this hasn't happened since 1965. Rainfall, soil moisture, and plant growth measurements are all in the lowest 5% ever measured. During the driest year on record, 1999, 248.8 millimetres of rain fell over Tamworth, according to the Bureau of Meteorology. This year, just 106 has fallen. So that's well below half of what their driest year is. Okay, so the driest year on record, right? Get that, 1999, 248. This year, 106. That's crazy. All right, no wonder everything's drying out. Um, and it goes off and explores the stories there as well. But including that data fact, okay, puts it in perspective how serious this is, guys. Obviously, the images here, and the amount of money that they have to then pay for feed. Um, $70,000 a week on feed for livestock. That's a lot. Obviously, we get that. But the main cause of this all comes back to rainfall, and that data there, really important. Okay, sending a pretty strong message in that article. So make a few comments, guys, on these articles, or email them out to you so you've got them for part two. But that's once we take a look back at the task sheet, that's it for part two at the moment. Okay, so part one, you're going off, crunching some numbers. Part two, crunch numbers again, compare them, and then make a comment on these articles. Part three, we're going to discuss next week. So thanks for listening into the recording. I'm going to stop the recording there. If you've got any questions, email me, and do the Education Perfect task before you finish off part two, just to clarify and confirm your understanding of box and whisker plots and a 5-number summary. All right, so recording is stopping there.